Earnings season is in full swing, cookie deprecation is delayed again, TikTok is getting banned, or is it? Plus, turnover at Paramount, a new report from ThinkBox, video on Spotify, and much more. I'm Jack Benjamin.
And I'm Ella Sagar.
We're reporters for The Media Leader, and this week we wanted to try out a shorter, briefer version of our regular Thursday podcast where we discuss the latest news and why it matters in the big picture. So today it will be our goal to run you, the listener, through everything you need to know about media this past week, and we'll try and do it in 20 minutes or less. Ella, does that sound good to you?
It sounds like a challenge.
Sounds frightening. If you like or dislike this format, please send us an email at news@the-media-leader.com with any feedback. And I would also say we are open to suggestions for topics you think we should discuss on the show. So yes, audience questions are welcome moving forward, and we would love it if you were involved. Before we get into it, Ella, there are a number of additional one-line stories this week we won't be able to discuss in as much detail. What were they?
So first up, Freely launched this week. It's a streaming service backed by the BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and Channel 5. ThinkBox also released a study, Profitability 2, which found all advertising is profitable, but some channels are more profitable than others, depending on brand category. Global's ad sales platform DAX turned 10, and Pinterest came out with its earnings, and its revenue jumped 23%, and its share price has responded positively.
Thanks, Ella. And you can read more about those stories and others on our website at themedialeader.co.uk. Now, let's jump right into our main stories. Google announced it was delaying cookie deprecation on Chrome again. We had been expecting cookies to complete their deprecation by the end of 2024, but that is no longer true. Ella, why is it being delayed again, and was this surprising? Does it change anything for advertisers and media owners?
I don't think it was overly surprising that it is the third delay since it announced that it would phase out cookies in 2020. So it is now expected that this would be more like 2025. It has already phased out 1% of for 1% of its users. So it's kind of started it, but there is the main reason why this has been pushed back is regulatory pushback, and with the Competition and Markets Authority and the Information Commission. So it gives more time for them to work out if the alternative privacy sandbox is fully anti-competitive. And it also then, I think all advertisers, all media owners are going to be working on their alternative solutions regardless of this delay or not. It shouldn't be a kind of, we can relax and take off the gas now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good point. It's worth noting that Google's under a lot of antitrust scrutiny in general right now over its ad platform. And so the sort of the fact that they're trying to change from cookies into this privacy sandbox, which is the post-cookie solution that they have, has just been essentially flagged as potentially anti-competitive.
Mm-hmm. On the subject of Google, its parent company Alphabet reported its earnings last week, which you reported on, Jack. And it had double-digit revenue growth, and particularly YouTube's performance was highlighted. Do you want to speak a bit more about that?
Yeah, I thought YouTube was, it's crazy. It earned over $8 billion just last quarter alone. That's an increase 21% year on year. And apart from that, YouTube Premium and YouTube TV also earned $15 billion in the full year of 2023. There's lots of ways for YouTube to be making money. Alphabet overall did really well. They even announced their first ever dividend and the share buyback scheme. So that's different ways to return value to investors and sort of a sign of maturity for tech companies. But YouTube, it's worth highlighting just how popular it is among especially younger audiences. According to Nielsen's The Gauge report, which it released in March, YouTube accounted for 9.7% of total TV usage. This is the US market that we're talking about, but that's the largest share of any streamer, more than Netflix. So highly popular. And we had listened at a previous event that we held at the Future of Audio and Entertainment a few weeks back. And one of the things they talked about was that YouTube is still being maybe under-considered on the media plan, that it's, because it's the first port of call for so many younger people, it might even be worth spending more on YouTube. So there's potentially ways for it to run. Speaking of video more generally, TikTok, of course, is one of the most popular short-form video platforms in the world, especially in the U.S. And U.S. President Joe Biden signed into law a bill that forces ByteDance to divest from the app or else be banned in 9 to 12 months.
Yeah, I'm curious. You are obviously our American colleague here, but even so, social media expert. What does this actually mean? Do you think TikTok ByteDance will do in response to that?
I've been keeping an eye on this closely. So TikTok says that they are basically going to take this to court. In the U.S., there's lots of protections for free speech and free expression, and also the Supreme Court historically has ruled over and over again that even, let's say, a lot of the concern is that China might be able to place propaganda or algorithmically make people see propaganda that is more positive about, let's say, China's interests than American interests. I mean, the Supreme Court has previously ruled that that's allowed under the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So they have probably a pretty good case. So I would actually be surprised, especially as China has said that they're not interested in the sale, and ByteDance would need to get approval from China, that probably won't get sold, that this is probably going to go to court. A judge is going to issue a stay that will keep TikTok open until a decision is ultimately made on whether or not the U.S. government is even allowed to ban such an app. So I think it'll be really interesting to see. There's good legal arguments, I'm sure, for and against that. So we'll wait and see. And in the meantime, the creators that use TikTok are probably going to stay there, but maybe we'll start considering backup options in case they just are forced off the platform.
That would make sense. And I read somewhere that with TikTok, I mean, something I didn't realize that TikTok is actually kind of a smaller part of ByteDance's overall business. And that the reason that it wouldn't sell, one of the reasons is that its algorithm is really important for the rest of the ByteDance business. So it is very much key to their kind of competitive edge, which they wouldn't want a third party company to then acquire by buying TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, their algorithm is essentially the equivalent of like gold. It's apparently one of the best in terms of just hooking people in and getting people to stay on the platform for longer and enjoying entertaining content. So that makes a lot of sense. Speaking of video, I mean, we talked about YouTube. Now we touched on TikTok. Spotify, not a company that I would associate very closely with video. But Ella, you reported on their latest financial results in which their CEO, Daniel Ek, said the company was moving to further move into video, be it through podcasts or music videos. What is this pivot to video? I mean, that has kind of a negative connotation after some failures of pivoting to video and lying previously by other companies in the space.
I think a lot of podcasts are moving into video, whether that is a vodcast or a visualized podcast or however you want to call it. So they have been doing that for a while. If you think about Joe Rogan, which is exclusive to Spotify, that a lot of that audience is watching the video. But what was interesting is that Spotify introduced music videos onto its music tab earlier this quarter in 11 markets. And it's also introduced music clips. And it was that element which makes it slightly different. It is combining kind of a typical music video and also that short form content from artists and themselves. So it isn't user generated content just yet. So from the people that I spoke to about this, they were interested but a bit unsure of how it would actually look on the platform because of how most users go to Spotify, they put the playlist on and then they put the screen off and put it away.
Right.
So it's just changing how a user would interact with the app. And it would have to be exclusive content on Spotify, not something that you could get on the likes of YouTube or TikTok. So there's a few different elements there, but Daniel Ek isolated, you're going to see more and more video content and more clips in a bigger way on the platform this year. And also the other two big trends that he highlighted were AI and the globalization of the music ecosystem, which was the most globalized, he said, that it has ever been. And the AI element makes sense, and they've already done a lot of work with AI-generated playlists, AI suggestions,
AI DJ.
AI DJ. So I think people were like, yeah, that makes sense, and it fits with the user behavior. But the videos, it was a bit of a question mark. But people were quite excited to see what's next.
What were buyers thinking of? What do they make of this? Because in general, videos tend to be more expensive, but maybe more effective in terms of if you can, will there be ad placements?
Yeah,
do you think?
I think you could place ads in a kind of pre-roll. You could do sponsorship, but I think it is
that inventory exists or is going.
That could be. That would be the way to go in, and the other way to go in if you wanted to generate more video content is through a partnership with likes of TikTok.
Right.
And someone like Taylor Swift, for example, has already got a massive following there, and then you can kind of work together on that. And those are kind of ways to kind of skip over that and help generate that in the first place.
Gotcha.
And also on the kind of sort of video related still, Snap.
Yeah, it's selfie related.
They reported their earnings last week. And Jack, you covered it for us, but there was a specific element, not just the revenue and not just the kind of number of users that you focused on small and medium sized businesses that Snap is eyeing up. So can you tell me what stood out for you about that?
Yeah. So I suppose first on that revenue growth, I mean, we're talking 21% revenue growth year on year in Q1. That includes a 15% growth in ad revenue. So some generally, positive figures for a social media company whose share price has not performed particularly well compared to some of its competitors. But I think a good chunk of that is probably being driven by big growth among small and medium sized enterprises. So there was an 85% increase in the number of small and medium advertisers on Snapchat year on year. I mean, that's pretty significant. We previously, on a previous episode of the podcast, we had Kate Scott Dawkins on. She's Group M's global president of business intelligence, and I'd recommend you go and listen to that episode because she's just wicked smart. And she noted that, I think some of the biggest social media and tech companies, their relative dominance among small and medium advertisers is really important to their business success. So for Snap to sort of say, we're going to make an effort and try and reach these people, be it through different ways in which small and medium advertisers can just more easily access the platform and buy advertising that they can then measure and view as effective, is really important to the continual business growth. And that's basically what their chief financial officer said. So it's definitely something to watch for them and for, frankly, any other major social media company or tech company, because that's where so much money is made. Big brands and big agencies, of course, are something that we like to track and keep an eye on. But there are, the SME market is extremely important to these types of companies.
Yeah, and I think we were talking earlier about Meta. Most of its business is from small and medium-sized companies. And I was also saying that Spotify hired someone to head up sales for SME. So they're definitely trying to tap into that area across the board.
And that's all about just making ad buys as easy as possible for someone with really small marketing teams, maybe just one marketing person, maybe not even a professional marketing person who's just trying to sell their stuff. Yeah.
So the self-serve platforms become really important then. That's really interesting.
Exactly. And speaking of, I mean, it's not just Meta that does really well with this group, and that's really important to the business. It's also Amazon. And Amazon's earnings also came out just this week. I'm curious, what did you see? I mean, we saw some big ad revenue growth again, similar story to some of the other companies that we've seen. What's behind the success and what are the figures?
Yeah, the figures, the ad revenue grew 24% for Q1 2024. So that's $11.8 billion. And that comprises about that sponsored video display ads. It now includes Prime Video ads, of course, which launched in the UK in February, on the 5th of February, I believe. And so they are huge numbers. But what I wanted to isolate was that Andy Jassy, who's the president for Amazon and the CEO, he said that there was good growth in its stores and Prime Video, but it was very early days was the words that he used for those businesses. So I would take that to mean this is only the start. So it's going to keep on accelerating. And because Prime Video only launched with ads at kind of midway through the quarter, that impact's going to be felt throughout. And we'll see, will people stick with the platform now that it has, ads that are kind of interrupting or in your content, or will they pay that extra $2.99 to go for an ad-free experience?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, is there churn going on with Amazon Prime Video? I mean, I think you covered this. Kantar had recently released a report about this in the UK market.
I think they had the highest churn and the kind of their lowest net promoter score for Q1 for Prime Video, which the Kantar Entertainment on-demand data highlighted as because other platforms have launched ads like Netflix, Disney Plus, and they haven't seen that kind of shift. So that's worth noting. And I think one thing that Amazon Prime Video wanted to launch with was, quote, meaningfully fewer ads than its competitors.
Right,
whether that's the case or not, we'll see.
Interesting. So, I mean, it's interesting that we've seen so much ad revenue growth this quarter without even necessarily the full effect of Amazon Prime Video's ads coming in. Brian Weiser, who's former head of global business intelligence at GroupM, now his own consultant, runs his own consultancy. He mentioned in his Substack newsletter that it seems like a lot of the growth was coming from, especially sort of undifferentiated cross-border merchants. These are people that are selling goods and goods on Amazon that are basically not dissimilar from any other types of similar goods. So they're going to have to pay a lot of money to Amazon to get advertised, or else their product wouldn't get seen or noticed because it's so much alike other products that exist.
And there must be so many listing pages and such.
Exactly. Yeah. So then they pay, but then that means that any of these more premium versions of whatever products are being made will then have to pay more to keep the others sort of off their tail. So Amazon's basically just reaping the benefits of having a user experience that maybe is declining because there's so many products and it's hard to differentiate between them. And so Amazon's just letting people pay to see, well, if you want to sponsor, then we'll take your money.
Yeah. On one of my panels with about digital commerce, Giovanni Pupo, who is he leads e-commerce at Lipton, he was saying you do really need to have a very separate strategy for Amazon, for Tesco, for all of these different retailers and their websites, and not just in terms of like what advertising you put behind it, but even what products you should put on each platform as well. So there's so much decision making behind how you represent your brand and the products across all of these different retailers. It gets more and more complicated every day.
Well. Last question for you, Ella. Paramount CEO Bob Bakish has left the company and is being replaced by a quote-unquote office of the CEO. I haven't heard this one before, consisting of 3 top executives. It also released its earnings this week, showing total advertising revenue grew 17%. Streaming service Paramount Plus increased revenue by 51% and narrowed losses to $286 million, has now 71 million subscribers. But this is all happening as the company's weighing a merger. So what's going on with that?
There's been a lot of rumors going on, and the most so Skydance is in merging talks with Paramount, which reportedly Bob Bakish was not happy about, and that led to some disagreements with Shari Redstone, who is the controlling shareholder of Paramount, as she is part of the parent company, and so there's other people on the scene as well. There was talks of a Sony and Apollo alliance that could take over, and earlier on in the year Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount were reportedly in talks as well, and it kind of harked back in my mind to what Rita Ferro, who's the VP of advertising at Disney, was saying in December, was that you should expect consolidation in the streaming market, quote, aggressively, unquote, this year. So that's all in the mix, and I think Skydance has apparently launched a kind of a final offer, which has got a $3 billion cash injection. So they're really trying to sweeten the deal.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on whether there is further consolidation in the market. It makes sense. I think Rita Ferro was sort of saying that there's simply too many players and not enough money going around between them. So it'll be interesting to see, but it's tough. I mean, Paramount's a really big brand, especially in the American market. So
and they had the Super Bowl, all of these big, tentpole content. So it will be very interesting to see what happens.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. We want to know if you liked the format or not. So just let us know either way. Ella, otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thanks, Jack.
Thanks again for listening to the Media Leader podcast. If you like what you hear, guess what? You can read our stuff at our website, themedialeader.co.uk, where you can sign up to our daily newsletter in the UK of analysis, opinion and commentary about what's going on in media and advertising. You can also find us on YouTube. We are posting video interviews and clips from our live events. And don't forget to check out our LinkedIn page, which is often a very interesting way to see what people in the industry are saying about our articles and the issues we write about. Anyway, get back to work. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.